Hi everyone, my name's Adam Jackson and welcome to the Cloud Skills Show live on MS Dev UK and on Learn TV. As I've said, I am Adam Jackson and here is my co-host, pointing the right way, that way, Dean Bryen. Hi Dean, how are you?
Hi Adam, I'm very well thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. You'd think we'd rehearse this. So welcome to the fourth episode of the Cloud Skills Show. So if you've watched the Cloud Skills Show before, you will know that we have a different theme each week. But if you're brand new to it, the intention of the show is each week we cover a different topic and we talk about the sort of skills that people can use to, find a new job or change their career or just sort of level up in what they're doing already. And this week is all about security. And we're going to be talking about things from a security infrastructure perspective. So, if you are an IT professional or if you're responsible for network security or if you're just interested in the topic of security and what we do, this episode today is for you. Now, before we get started, I just want to mention a couple of key things. First of all, that is that, of course, just like every Microsoft event, we have a code of conduct and we all ask to hold ourselves to these standards. And you can pause the video or come back to this if you want to know more. Also search for Microsoft Code of Conduct. You can find this all online. And then the other important thing is accessibility. So we have this service is captioned. We provide this on Learn TV. At the bottom of the page, you can see that there is a button about captioning. And I think also if you're watching on YouTube, you can get captioning as well, so you can watch that back. Also, we take all of the links that we talk about in today's show and we put those on dev.to, and I'll share the link at the end of today's show. And don't forget as well, the other thing is that we are on Learn TV, and after we finish today, the program goes on. We keep broadcasting 24/7. We're always online on there. So, without further ado, those are my notices over. There is no fire alarm planned today. The toilets are wherever you normally put them. And let's get started. So welcoming Dean, and Dean, great for you to introduce yourself. We worked together for about 18 months, just over now, but you've been at Microsoft for a few years?
Yeah, I've been at Microsoft a few years. I primarily focus on security and cloud security. A bit of a generalist in that area, really spanning all sorts of things from infrastructure to OPSEC and even application security. And I do a bunch of work in the serverless space. I won't be talking too much about that today. But yeah, really excited to kind of get on with the show, really, Adam, and just kind of share with everybody our great guests that we have with us today, and just talk a little bit about how people can kind of, like you say, there's different people. Maybe people are new to security, maybe people are like in the IT industry and they're looking to do more in the InfoSec space, or they're new to the cloud and they know about security on on-premises land and they want to understand what that's like in the cloud. Hopefully there'll be some good nuggets of information today that they can take away and go ahead and learn more and dive deeper into it following the show.
Brilliant, that's absolutely great. And apologies if I have a slight camera lag today. You may have noticed I am actually in the office. We opened for the first time this week our offices, but I do not have a Wi-Fi connection because they've not wired up. I do not have an Ethernet connection. They have not wired up my office yet, so I'm on the Wi-Fi, and it seems to be a little bit dodgy at times. So if you see me on a lag, it looks like I am right now, then I do apologise. So I think that we'll introduce our guest, and now I have to get the direction right. Which way am I pointing? Is it that way? It's that way. Hang on. Here he is.
It's the other way, Adam, is it? Where's he coming? Where's he going to go? It's that way.
Hello. Hi, David.
Hello. Hi. How are you doing today? How are you both doing?
Very well. How are you?
Yeah, doing good. Thanks. Doing good. Good to see you both again. Just excited to be part of this conversation today.
Likewise. So I'm going to disappear off air, and I think, Dean, you're going to introduce David properly in just a second. So I'll see you all again soon.
Nice. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so David, thank you for coming along and joining us on the show today. We met, I think, was it last year at Ignite in Orlando when we were allowed to travel places?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Yeah. So I still remember that. So you came over to the stand that I was working at then. So I was working for one of Microsoft partners, one of the stands, and you came over, and it was just nice to just speak to someone that also has interest in the same area that I have interest, which is in the area of Azure security. So that was how we met. Yeah.
Nice. And you're now a kind of cloud security architect, a new company since then, right?
Yeah.
And you're doing a bunch of other stuff, right? You're a recently awarded, congratulations, Microsoft MVP. So
yeah, I'm so
awesome
glad
to have you
about
on board
that.
there.
You can see sort of like the plaque over there.
In the back corner. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Love that.
there. Yeah.
But also one thing, just a kind of shameless plug, maybe. You've also just recently started a new meetup, right?
Yes, that's correct. So I started a new meetup called just Azure Security Meetup, and the main focus being to bring another side of a security conversation into Azure. So I know that you do a lot of this yourself, Dean. So you're one of the very few people that I saw that had content around offensive security related to Azure, and it's essentially to highlight a lot of research in that area, because I think that that's a part of Azure security or cloud security education that we need to drive some point home to a certain type of audience. They just won't get it unless we show them the real risk.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of the reasons I started doing that kind of content, really, was like, I think if I was observing before I was really doing much security stuff, if I saw how easy it would be for a bad actor or something to attack my environment, I'd probably wake up a little bit and be like, damn, we need to sort this out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's happened a few times, right? In the few sessions that I've done, someone is like, okay, that was really easy to get to that credential. You know, we can talk about best practices and we say, okay, make sure you use a service like Key Vault, right, for secret management. And people are like, yeah, okay. I'll still go ahead and put that connection string as a configuration setting in app service. But if you show people how easily an attacker could exploit that if they gain a foothold into your environment, then all of a sudden people wake up a bit more and people go, okay, that seems like something that I want to take care of as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, I agree. So the OffSec stuff's really exciting, and we're going to be talking more about that at future events. But the focus of today is around specifically why I wanted to invite you to the show was, as somebody who does a bunch of stuff in the cloud security and particularly the Azure security space, just to kind of share your kind of thoughts with people from the perspective of, right, they're either new to Azure and they're familiar with other clouds, or they're coming from an on-premises environment, or they're completely new to this and they want to kind of, they've maybe got a job and they're starting to put resources in the cloud, and how can they get, what's the first thing they should do to go about securing it? Where should they start? What kind of approach can they take? What resources can they use to learn? So yeah, we'd love to get your insights into some of those, and we'll chat about them now.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good question. So I actually took the journey myself. So I worked in just as a network security specialist in my former life, right? So, and then I took the journey of transitioning over and just upskilling myself to become a cloud security specialist and then cloud security architect. And it's one of those things that when I started the journey, one of the things that first helped me to get it was understanding shared security responsibility. Right. So even though I expect that a lot of people should be aware of that at the moment, it's still shocking to me, like how many people I speak to that still don't understand shared security responsibility and the implication of that in the whole conversation around just cloud security as a whole. So that's probably where I'll just say the starting point is you want to understand what your responsibilities are when it comes to security. So, because when people see that, you get to see that a lot of the things that we're talking about, they're not something that actually new, right? It's something that you're probably already used to. It's just working in a different context, maybe with a different type of skill, right? So maybe adopting different principles in terms of how quickly you have to move. But just starting with shared security responsibility is the first place that I would say to start with.
Nice. So just understanding which part of the stack you're responsible for, and I guess that allows people to kind of just focus on the bits that are really important to them, right?
Yes.
And then how in maybe we'll talk about Azure specifically. How would people in Microsoft Azure go about doing that? So they understand what parts of the stack are their responsibility, and like for those listening, that depends on what services you're using, right? If you're using infrastructure as a service, there's a little bit more responsibility on your part if you're using platform as a service. But let's imagine that somebody's gone through that process. For this people, if you're not sure about shared responsibility model, chuck that in Google. There's plenty of articles about it.
Yeah.
how would they then what would they then do next about what would they then do next? I see you've just pulled up there.
Yeah, I've just pulled up that document because again, it's just one of those things that just clearly highlight it, right? So it clearly highlights and says, so what we're talking about, if you're using a service that fits into the infrastructure as a service model or platform as a service or software as a service, you can see that the responsibility sort of varies between the different models. But one of the things that I also like to point out to people is that regardless of the model that you're using, you're never without responsibility, right? Even if you're using software as a service, you always have a responsibility. So if you're sort of like taking the hands-off approach of, I'm just going to ship everything over to Azure and let Microsoft take care of that. So be aware that you're always with responsibility, regardless of the model that you're using. It could be that the responsibility just lessens, right? Because if you're using something like a platform service where Microsoft takes care of the updates of the platform or the infrastructure for you, that's one less responsibility to worry about. However, you still need to worry about your configuration. You still need to worry about your you still need to worry about your data and how you secure access to the service that you're using. So essentially, that's the first place to start.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. That's it's a great doc, and the graphic really brings it home around what you need to look after for the various services. And yeah, it's not a chuck it in the cloud and forget about it kind of thing. There's no such thing as no ops or no security, right? So assuming that we've done that, where would you recommend somebody kind of go next in Azure to kind of really get a hold of what their posture, the security posture, looks like?
Yeah, so one of the, and thanks very much for actually even using that term security posture, because that's one of the first places to also start, right? So when you're starting out with security in Azure, there's different levels of maturity that we can talk about. However, the foundational one that you probably want to handle as quickly as possible is, number one, what do I have in the cloud? Number two, how are they configured? Because if you look at one of the top reasons for cloud breaches, it's because people misconfigure stuff that they have in the cloud, or people do not know what they have. So I've seen cases where something got exposed and then people went, oh, we didn't know that we had that, right? So understanding, number one, what exactly do I have in the cloud? So in Azure, for example, do you know how many Azure accounts do you have in your organization, right? If you're an InfoSec person. So that's something to find out. Different ways for you to use to find out, right? There could be shadow IT. You could, you maybe have to monitor some network logs and see people that are going to portal.azure.com in your organization. Go to talk to your finance department. Go check out what they're paying for. Who's paying for what? Are they paying for anything relating to Azure? So you first have to find out what do we have in Azure, right? And then once you have that, then the next thing is, number two, are we following best practice in how we are configuring this? And the best service for that to start with is Azure Security Center. Azure Security Center is just an amazing service. So for those that are not aware, just make Azure Security Center simple. It does three main things. It does many things beyond three main things, but that's the three core things Azure Security Center does. So number one thing is it uses something called Azure Policy to monitor our Azure subscriptions and the resources that we have in them. So that way, it's going to automatically alert us to say, hey, you have a service here in your Azure subscription, and this service is not configured according to security best practice. So that will help to quickly get a hold of what our security posture is. So, but Security Center, what I like about it is it takes that further to extend to compliance. So it does what I call cloud compliance posture management. So apart from just security focus, it also compliance focus to say if you have certain compliance frameworks that you need to meet in your organization, rather than you having to go dig it up by yourself. Okay, what do I need to have configured in Azure to be GDPR compliant and all that stuff? Security Center has done a lot of that where you could just hook it in, works with security with Azure Policy to do a continuous cloud compliance posture assessment of your services. And then finally, it does just threat protection, where it could look at some of the logs of some of the services. So for example, I personally like the Azure SQL threat protection capabilities that it has, being able to identify different types of threats that we could find out by ourselves, but judging by how difficult it is to get security talents these days, it's probably not something that we have enough time to spend doing that. So Security Center just simplifies that by running through these logs and identifying just indicators of compromise in our environment or to these services and just highlighting them to us. So that's where I would recommend to start with, right? So start by understanding, what do I have in the cloud? What cloud accounts do I have? What do I have in them? And number two, how they configured securely. Those are the 2 points I'll probably recommend.
Nice. Yeah. It's funny how much inventory management kind of gets overseen, right? Just like knowing what you have, especially in large organizations. And it's more of a challenge than we probably give credit to the people that actually have to go and find that. I remember working in I'm talking back in 2012 now, working in I worked for a different organization then, and we were doing an internal audit, and it was a very large on-premises bunch of data centers estate. And I was working in the SOC at the time, trying to protect our own assets. And firstly, I did exactly the same thing, right? Let's go and see what we've actually got, right? And in a multi-billion-pound company, that was pretty hard, right? We're finding servers sitting under people's desks and all sorts of stuff. So, I mean, the cloud makes that a little bit easier. You can query APIs and things like that. But yeah, it's still a pretty difficult challenge for people to kind of get that.
And that's absolutely
control.
true. Yeah, so that's absolutely true, Dean, what you just brought up now. So the cloud does make some things easier when it comes to security, because sometimes we can tend to focus on sort of like the challenges of cloud security. And there are challenges, right? So, but there are also benefits, right? So for example, we have things, we can query things via API and just do a continuous assessment. And also some responsibilities, like many organizations actually have gaps in their on-premises environment, and transitioning things over to the cloud can actually help them fill those gaps more quicker, because maybe they don't have budgets to be able to go purchase whatever tool that they need. One of the questions I used to ask people when I do like an Azure security talk in the early days was I used to ask them to say, how many of you work in an organization where you have $1 billion to spend on security every year? It's like very few hands go up. I'm like, but that's exactly what companies like Microsoft do, right? So they're able to invest heavily in security, and then a small, medium organization or even an enterprise organization can take advantage of that by adopting the platform. In some cases, that can help to fill some of the gaps that we currently have on premises.
Yeah, nice. I love that. And then the security center thing you said about the posture management is great. And there's one feature of Azure Security Center that I'm sure you've used, and people that are new to it, I think it's a really good way to almost gamify the compliance management of system, which is the secure score, right? So
yes.
I love that I can log into Azure Security Center and I get like a score of how secure my environment is against my policies.
Yeah.
And I can dive into the recommendations, right? I really like that feature. I'm sure you use it yourself.
Yes, it's an amazing one. And I like that Microsoft, they do that with Security Center, but they also extend it to other security products that they have. It just sort of helps to set goals much more easily, right? So I can get a snapshot of what my security situation looks like. And then I mean, having a basic understanding of the higher the score that I have, the lower the risk that I have in my environment, or the lower the score, the higher the risk. So I'm trying to get to a higher score and then lower the risk that I have in my environment. So it just helps an organization or an InfoSec team to prioritize and manage their security efforts. And that's the advantage of some.
Yeah, that's great. I really love that. And I must say, actually, I know we haven't got too much time together left in the show, but there's another feature that I think is definitely worth people knowing. And you said you came from a network background, and I myself come from a network background. So one feature in Security Center, which is a small feature, but it's a powerful one for people, is the just-in-time access for virtual machines, which I'm sure all of us have been guilty in the past of opening up RDP or SSH ports from the internet so we can administer and manage our resources and in the cloud. That happens too, right? People spin up a VM and they open RDP or SSH. But what just-in-time access gives us is the ability to kind of, well, two things: control that and keep it closed most of the time, which is good, but also to audit it as well, right? Yes,
exactly. And especially if you have an organization. So for many people that probably just adopting Azure, or even people that have adopted Azure for a while, there's this concept of privileged access workstations, where people have this workstation that's dedicated to do just high privileged tasks in your environment, right? And that's something that you probably want to protect a lot, and protect the management part and access to them. And what you mentioned, which is Security Center, I mean, just just a detour, a little bit of detour here. Security Center is an amazing solution that has multiple capabilities. And just a detour for people that want to be able to delve more deeper into something like Azure Security Center and the capabilities that it has. There's some very nice content on Microsoft Learn that goes into details, again, just covers all those different points that we've talked about with compliance, posture management, security posture management, threat protection, and just advanced capabilities like application control and other things. But back to what we were saying. So yeah, so just-in-time access can just help to prevent that where we are opening management pods and just opening them up to be attacked or to be scanned. The truth about it is you create a VM instance in Azure, you give it a public IP address, within a matter of seconds, it's going to be scanned for vulnerability, right? So yeah, so the Security Center just helps to take care of that. Don't open it until you need it. So you open it just at the point of need, and also for the amount of time that you need. I only need to do something for 1 hour. Why do I need to have it perpetually? Just open it for 1 hour, finish your task, and close it back up.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, I think Adam is kind of producing in the background here, and he's got a link, I think, for us to around. There's a new series for the Cloud Security, Azure Security Center Ninja training, Become an Azure Security Center Ninja series on the Tech Community blog. That literally just came out a couple of weeks ago, or this week even. And it's a really good resource for people if they want to dive through and step through various modules. So yeah, I encourage people to look at that. But David, unfortunately, we're at time. The show must go on. You can head back to the green room that we've provided for you and eat peanuts or whatever else.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming and joining us on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully people have got some good first steps to take when they start leveraging the cloud from a security perspective.
No problems at all, and it's also been a pleasure having this conversation. And I'm looking forward to you also speaking at our meetup group again. Always look forward to your content, so I'm sure it'll be great.
I can't wait for it.
Yeah.
I'll see you there.
Yeah, see you. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers,
everyone.
David.
Oh, it's a great opportunity to get that in there. Thanks, David. For being a little while. Well, that was really interesting. And I was like working, scrambling in the background because there he's back. Hang on, there we go. I was scrambling in the background because my internet connection went super slow all of a sudden. So, I think I've caught most of that, and hopefully I put all of the links up as well that David mentioned. But we will put them in an article at the end as well, and share that with everyone.
Great stuff. So Adam, we're going to have a little chat now on the show about people that want to get into InfoSec, whether that's a career changers or already in IT, you want to maybe do something in the security space. It seems interesting. So yeah, should we talk about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a complete beginner. I mean, it's interesting. We've had, people on throughout the show that are absolute experts in their area. And then last week we were talking about AI, and we had Emily, who's one of my colleagues in developer marketing, and she's completely new to AI, and she's actually doing some of the things like AI fundamentals and trying to understand how that's relevant to her life. So I guess I'm almost coming from the same position. My first question will be for someone like me who's in the world of IT. But doesn't really know what I should even know. What should I even know about security? I mean, because I read all these things about all these wonderful products that we launch. But your average person in IT, what should they actually know about security, and how where do they even get started?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's such a big industry, right? The InfoSec industry, as we call it, is very broad, right? It spans a bunch of things from intelligence to offensive security, like David and I was just talking about, and penetration testers or ethical hackers that are attacking environments legally to find vulnerabilities and provide reports, through to cloud security engineers who are writing stuff, through to network security and firewalls and intrusion detection. And then you have application security. You have people that focus on identity and owning that kind of piece of the puzzle. There's a whole swathe. It's a big industry, right? And that can be a little bit daunting for people at first when they're trying to think, right, I've heard about this cybersecurity thing. All these hackers in the news sound pretty like the stories seem pretty interesting. How can I get involved in this kind of scene? I think the first thing to do is to kind of try and understand that landscape a little bit of what the different roles are within the security community, and try and understand what they are and which one is interesting to you, right? Because as much as we'd love to, I find it really hard. I always see these things. I'd love to know more about threat intelligence, or I'd love to know more about, I don't know, OffSec and become some elite ethical hacker or something, right? And then I'm too old for that now. So it's picking something that you think you're really going to enjoy and you're passionate about, and kind of just learning that first, I think, would be the first thing, especially if you're already in IT. So it could be something that's relevant at work because you're already engaged with that team. I think if you're in an organization where you interact with a security team, maybe that would be a good place to start, because you've got exposures there and there's some educational resources. But there's a great blog actually from Tanya Yanka, who used to be one of our colleagues actually. She is known as She Hacks Purple on Medium or on Twitter, and she did a blog around like job roles in InfoSec, and just kind of said like what the various jobs were and what those kind of jobs entailed. I think it's really good for beginners to understand what is available out there, what kind of job you can do. So what do you want to do, Adam? That's the question.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a really great question. And actually, it's funny that you were mentioning ethical hacking, because I always remember not so much a secret, but I think a lot of people assume that I came from an IT background. I actually didn't. I actually studied human resource management at university. Never worked a day in my life in human resources. Sorry, no offense.
But you are good at the internal systems of Microsoft.
Yeah. If you want to book a day off, or you want, anything like that, deal with the sprawling HR system that Microsoft has, then yeah, absolutely, I'm your man for that. But I actually had a bit of a flashback to university, because a few of my classes, HR was sort of the great unloved bit of the business school. So a lot of the times we were turfed out the building, and we were in the IT, we were in the computer science block instead. And I remember, looking at these classes as they're going on, like ethical hacking for computer security back in like 2008, and I was thinking, what's that even all about? And I think back then it was this really exotic thing. If you were a hacker, you're probably like, someone in this room full of servers, and you're up to no good. And now it's like, actually it's like a really, and I think then it was, it was definitely something you could do that was a good thing, but it wasn't known. I think now a lot more people know that you can be, an ethical hacker, and you can do those things. Now, someone like me, I'm obviously not going to be that person. But I think what I want to know is, is what can I do, in my job to help colleagues be more secure, be more secure in myself. I think, I obviously want to understand if I'm building something on Azure, from a, not from a development perspective, but just from a basic perspective of someone that's, loading up some services. What are the easy things I can do? What are the easy things that I can learn? And what are the top things that I need to be aware of?
Yeah, I think the first thing is the mentality and the mindset, and it's thinking, sounds really bad now, but I'm going to say, like, don't trust anyone and question everything, right? I think if you can get yourself in that kind of mindset where whatever action you're taking, if you're deploying a resource, right, say you're deploying a virtual machine, right, and there's that section that says open management ports, like RDP, and you can tick a box, just like question everything, right? And at first you won't know whether something should be questioned or not, but I think asking questions is probably the best way to learn anything, right? If you, I was helping mentor a young colleague of ours once through the Azure fundamental stuff, and we went through deploying a virtual machine, and we just questioned every single step. Like, why are we doing this? Why do we need to give the machine an IP address? Right? Does it need a public IP address? Right? How are we going to access this machine? Is it safe to access the machine in that way? And it took us like 2.5 hours to deploy a VM by doing it that way, which people are like, that's ridiculous. It's still quicker than on premises, by the way. But but it just took it was good to go through that process and just question. I think it's just getting into that mindset where you question things, right? And understanding that security is everybody's responsibility, right? Whoever's doing it, right? It's not okay to say, like draw the diagram on the whiteboard and be like, the firewalls? Oh, that's looked after by the security team. I don't really have to worry about that, right? Just remember that, like, if it's got security in it, or it's about protecting your company's assets or infrastructure, then it's everyone's responsibility. So just asking those questions, and the top tip I would say is just be curious and question everything, right? And see why about all these things.
And I found quite a good article, and I've put the link up on the screen, which is about security best practices, and these are things that Microsoft have actually written down. Some of the ways that Microsoft themselves, approach security. Obviously, every company is different, but I think there's things that everyone can learn from that. And I think even if you're watching and you don't consider yourself technical, you can learn a great deal about these things. And that's really important, even if you're not technical, because if you're making decisions about anything, whether that's a product or you're deploying something or you're doing some testing, or you're the financial controller that's approving this new service, you should probably be asking these questions.
Yeah, and like sometimes it's little things, right, Adam? Like things like saying, "Oh, I'm looking at procuring this new piece of software. Like, does it support two-factor authentication?"
Yeah.
Right. When our users log into this system, right? And then if they don't, you may be start questioning like, well, should we really be using this software? Is this company security focused? Especially when procuring SaaS software, where you're similar to people procuring the cloud, you're relying on that company's kind of security practices for some part of the stack, right?
Yeah, I remember. I'll have to add the link for this later because it's just sort of popped into my head. But when I was working in the partner team in Microsoft, and I was dealing with health, I must have got the question about once a week on sort of like what Microsoft's credentials are, and the sort of you get questions back then about surely Azure can't be as secure as the data center that's in my hospital, completely ignoring the fact that it's probably like the door's probably propped open, with a bucket or something like that. Anyone could walk in. But we used to get these questions all the time, and I remember we put something together called Trust Center, which was really, really important actually in demonstrating all of these things, and also giving it wasn't just saying that we were doing things, but it was proving and going for certifications and things like that that were really, really important. And of course now it's a given that services like Azure are secure, at least from a fundamental infrastructure point of view. But of course, it's not just the service itself; it's what you do with it that's important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned certification. I know you're talking about a different kind of certification to what I'm about to talk about, but it did remind me. But obviously, certification is another way to go for people to learn more about services. So there's lots of certification out there. People that are new to the industry completely, there are like third-party certifications like Security Plus and things like that for people that are completely new. But then if you're already familiar with the cloud and you want to start learning more about security, then the AZ500 certification is the Microsoft Azure Security Technologies. I think at the end of that, you'll be a certified Microsoft Azure Security Engineer Associate or something like that. So that's a good kind of path if people want to go down a more kind of formal education. I'll say formal, it's not university. It's a test that you take yourself at your own time, and you can self-study. And there's a bunch of content on Microsoft Learn for this. There's also third-party content on training websites. And that's a point I really want to make to people that want a career change or learn about security. There's so much content out there today, right? You don't need to go and say, go to the Royal Holloway and do a master's degree in information security or a bachelor's or whatever. You don't need a formal education to get into this industry. There's so much resources out there. With the cloud, it's almost free to get started, right? Spin up servers, virtual machines, start really understanding the environment and how things go. Just go to YouTube, right? There's so much stuff out there. If you're interested in ethical hacking, there's some great content out there from like NahamSec and Live Overflow. And there's so many good users out there that are doing like live hacking on Twitch to teach people how to do that kind of stuff. From the more infrastructure security stuff, there's a bunch of channels out there doing that. You can go to other training platforms, like third-party training platforms, and buy a course for $30 or $10 in a sale, and start learning this stuff and understanding it. So I guess my point is that if you want to get these certifications, you can self-study for them. It's not a formal education that you need to get into this industry. It's more around demonstrating what you can do and what you've learned. And sometimes being a self-starter in the IT industry plays to your advantage, right? Because like being inquisitive by nature and wanting to learn things is 9/10 of our job sometimes.
Yeah, and I think one of the really cool things is that historically we had, and we talked about this a bit in the first episode of the series, we had the team that were developing all of the documentation on one side, and that's the team that you and I work in or when, I know that you're building some stuff yourself, Dean. I know we've actually got a dedicated team that builds this stuff out with Microsoft Docs and Microsoft Learn, but obviously the contributors to that are all across the company. And then we have another team who does the certifications, in a team that's called Microsoft Worldwide Learning. And of course, what we found for a couple of years is that it wasn't exactly 100% aligned between the exam and the learning materials. And actually, that's something that really now is coming a lot more together. And I noticed when I was looking through AZ 500 this morning that you don't have to do that exam. I haven't done that exam, but I've done some of the modules that are underneath it. So if you're interested in learning, there's no barrier to learning. There's no exam to learn. There's no cost to learn. You can do all of those modules and learning paths, and actually, and collect your points in Microsoft Learn. And then, if you feel the exam is right for you, the certification is right for you, because it is very valuable for your, for many people's career, then that's the time that you can say, right, I'm going to take this. But in terms of the self-guided learning and the fact that you can use those online resources to prepare for your exam, that's absolutely great. And I obviously want to call out the fact we've got some wonderful in-person, not in-person right now, but online led instructors who actually also do a great walkthrough of these things as well. And of course, all the details are online at the usual place.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, so I think just to kind of summarize our chat, Adam, is that it's a great industry to get into. It's broad, it's vast, it's a little bit daunting at first, but if you kind of focus and choose where you want to target your effort, then it's not so bad. It's not so daunting, and you can really hone your kind of skill. And there's very little barrier to entry really in terms of education, like costs or formal education. So yeah, if you're interested in security and getting into the field, start today. Hit me up. Like, I'm happy to help anyone who wants to get into the field if they're watching this.
Brilliant. And I think that before we meet our next guest, just going to give you a quick opportunity to do a little plug for your meetup as well. I think I was going to ask you about communities. There's lots of communities.
Oh, nice, yeah.
You've actually recently set one up, haven't you?
Yeah. So as David mentioned, he runs an Azure cloud security meetup, which is in the UK, but it's going to be online. So because most things are online at the moment, so that's relevant. But I myself am one of the co-organizers of the Cloud Security London meetup. So if you're interested in that, you can head over to cloudsecuritylondon.com, which will take you to our meetup page, and you can sign up for our next event, which is in November the 6th. We do every other month on a Wednesday, and we try and cover. We're kind of agnostic. We talk about multiple clouds. We talk about. In fact, my co-organizer is from another different coloured cloud provider, and we try and talk about kind of agnostic topics around cloud security. And even if we do focus on one cloud provider, we try and make it so that if you squint your eyes a little bit, it would be relevant across the entire industry. So yeah, we run every couple of months, and it's online right now at the moment. So yeah, if anyone wants to join, head over to cloudsecurity.london.com and check it out.
That was quite a coy reference to your co-organizer.
Yeah. He also looks identical to me. Yeah,
there might be a reason for that. Yeah. Right. Well, I'm going to say no more. And I think now we're going to bring in our next guest, Paul. And I don't know if he's going to appear in the middle of us or to the side. So
we got a point again, have we?
I don't know which way we're going. It's that way, isn't it? I just can't do this. Hang on.
Oh no, it's that way.
Actually, yeah. Hi, Paul. So I'm going to just speak up again, and I think Dean's going to continue the conversation. I'll be back right at the end of the program.
Cheers, Adam.
Awesome.
Hey, Paul. How's it going?
Hey, Dean. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, great chatting to David and Adam there, and super excited to have you on board. So you're also an MVP, right?
Yeah, I've been 11 times. My thing is getting MVP heavy at this stage.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Well, congrats on another renewal this year.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I really wanted to kind of talk to you. I know you do a bunch of work in the kind of security operations space. Yeah. So I really wanted to kind of chat to you around. We've got our stuff in the cloud, for example, right? We're already running our resources in the cloud. We've done the security center stuff. We kind of keep it on top of our posture, we think. How can we kind of operate that environment and gain deeper insights into what's actually happening in our environment?
Yeah, so I mean, Microsoft had log analytics for ancient, at least 5 years old. nearly decrepit at this stage in security terms. So they'd log analytics, they'd logic apps, they'd this, insane platform, Azure. And, Azure is basically like this massive box of Lego. Hey, what do you want to do? We can go and do it. And so, hey, we've got log analytics, we're pulling data in, surely we could just build better analytics onto that data. And, hey, presto, they got Azure Sentinel. And then at the same time in the Azure ecosystem, you have, 14,000 portals across, everything that Microsoft does. And all I do is work in security. And the feedback I hear from everybody is there's too many portals. I have to go to too many places. And Microsoft knows this and they hear it. And so, the emphasis on Sentinel is, hey, can we pull everything together? Can we do the correlation and analytics in one place? And then, the slogan you'll hear from Microsoft is minutes matter, right? So if minutes matter, what do we need to do? Well, we have to be able to take action from inside your Azure environment. Super important. You have to be able to, run logic apps or have logic apps run automatically to do things when you see something happen in Azure. And then Microsoft have built, so people say, oh, I can get automation anywhere. Well, if you can get automation as good as logic apps functions and Azure automation, and then if you can get the infrastructure like private link, like ISE, like hybrid worker roles, so that, we're able to show attacks on-prem, in your home office, in Google Cloud, anywhere, and us respond to those across APIs, across private link into your own data center. And that response, people talk about managed detection and response. Everyone does managed detection. It's the or that matters. That's the secret. Giving you a fancy report to say, hey, it turns out Dean was breached and someone exfiltrated loads of data and they left this big back door and, here's the reports, what's happened for the last 3 weeks. I mean, shoot me now, it has to fire, a logic has to go in, Dean's account gets blocked, the IP they're communicating gets blocked, an SMS goes off on Dean's phone, to say, hey, dude, sorry, we got to block you, contact help desk, alert stopped. That's really the drive. And then the other component, the two things that are going to win the cyber war is, well, okay, we have to assume everyone's going to collect the logs from all your data, right? You need a SIEM to do that, security incident and event management. You need to pull all those logs. That's number one. If you use Microsoft SIEM, great. If you don't, you need a SIEM to do it. And then when you pull those logs, you need to be able to respond, okay? But responding is kind of pulling the trigger. Hey, I'm going to go and block this user, block this account, isolate a machine, stop you getting an app. It's aggressive. And so if we're going to take that action, it would be great if you could be sure, if you had what we call high fidelity incidents, so that you actually know and understand, what you're looking at when you see something. And then what makes an incident really high fidelity is if you can risk score what's happening in the incident with machine learning. That's that's the whole deal. And so I have a few portals and stuff. Can I screen share for a little bit?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
show you guys.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a really good point there you make around, like, one, the first step is to get all your data in, right? And then getting insights from that is one thing, but the high fidelity comes from, and you'll talk about this in machine learning, but it's looking at different stages of the kill chain, right? And correlating a bunch of different sources of information. It's no good just looking at the data from Azure activity logs in its own, right? You want to look at the data from the Azure activity log and then maybe the AV audit logs or something like that, and correlating that information and using machine learning for even more enhanced stuff to get that high fidelity, right?
Big time. So what I'm going to show just here, is that screen size okay, or do I need to make it a little bit bigger? I can go out of it there. Is it okay there? So this is the sign-in log in Azure Sentinel. It's just, Azure AD sign-in log. It's a beautiful log. Why is it a beautiful log? Because it shows, it shows me coming in. It shows my authentication details. MFA was completed by, a token in the password. And then it comes in and it shows some really nice things, right? And what it starts to show, sorry, that's actually not a great one because that's me failing to come in. Let me just show you this one here. What it starts to show is, it starts to show, MFA was satisfied by claiming the token, fine. It starts to show my conditional access policies and, if they were applied. And then it shows the device I came in on. And then super importantly, Sentinel goes to the Microsoft Graph and it looks at my risk score. So in a single place, it comes in and it shows you if there was risk associated with me when I signed in. And then if I just show you here, here's a user called Pim. And when Pim tried to log in on this one here, if I just show you, it says, hey, here's Pim coming in. Here's the authentication details. There's the browser. And then it says, hey, look, the risk score during sign-in was really high. So we had to block this sign-in because it came from an IP address associated with malicious activity. So in one log, and then if I just show you this, in Born in the Cloud for me, that was kind of a mirror and a mirror and a mirror there, wasn't it? If I go SIGN, so this is me in production where user principal name contains Paul. I just show you this inside Born in the Cloud's production environment. So if you just look at this sign in now, it comes in and it says, hey, here is Paul, signing in with MFA. There's the conditional access policies and they succeeded. And then here's my device details. Okay. I'm coming in on my desktop 2. It's compliant, it's managed, and it's, Azure AD joined and trusted. And then here's my IP. I live in France. And then here is my risk score. My risk score is 0, right? So in a single log file, I'm able to pull in some real nice data. And then I talk about high fidelity incidents. So here's cloud app security. Lots of people will be familiar with this, and the dreaded impossible travel alert. And so what this alert is telling me is, here's a user signing in America and India, okay? This user, Shivam, works for us in our SOC in India, and we have VDI environment, Windows Virtual Desktop in America, and hey presto, within 304 minutes, he's logged in. So I don't want this incentive. That's too low fidelity. And so if I just show you here, if I go to SEC, if I go to security alert, where alert name contains TRAVEL, contains travel, and I go in and I just put that back for 3 days, and I'll go and I'll get the, there's Shivam's impossible travel alert. But we already know that we get these beautiful sign-in logs that hold way more data. So what is a high fidelity query? Well, a high fidelity query is where I would go and I would pull the impossible travel alert. Okay, so I'd get the impossible travel alert. I'd parse out the IP. Yep. We use a function called is not seen for. We want to know when's the last time we saw this IP address, or first time. Then we look at the compliancy of the device. We look for error codes in the sign-in. We go to your Office activity, and we basically drill better holes in your data, right? And then just so people understand, the last bit of this is that when we go to the cloud app security data analytic, we say, do not allow rules, do not create incidents for us based on impossible travel and mass download, and we just write our own analytic, right? So that's
Right.
the first part of first of all is have better incidents, and then when you have a better incident to begin with, we use Jupyter notebooks. It's an open source platform, and we run our notebooks just on a VM just because they're quicker and more easier to use. And just what I want to do here is I want to score a host. So I've logged on a PC, it's created an alert. I want to know, is this PC safe? Is there a risk associated with it? And so I'm connecting to log analytics environment, CF Secure Start. I import a bunch of open source libraries, and then we get people to write things like the link status. If you're being breached and I'm doing reconnaissance, there's more failed links than established. We look at network latency. Are you communicating with a machine in North Korea? We look at security alerts. We look at your suspicious processes. We look at your threat detection, and we build these risk scores. And we can sit with you, or you can do it yourself, and you can bring, we can adjust these for you. All right. And then just to give you an example, how this runs for us is we have this, built into an API. I won't go into the details of it, but I want to try and risk score Prab's machine. I just say, try it out, and I hit execute. And if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, it's supposed to run on 4, 5, 6, that has just ran that notebook. And the notebook has come back and said, hey, look, this machine has a confidence of 0.8 out of 1. It's super high. It says, look, no alert is found, no suspicious processes. So we're able to tell you why you get the score, and then what it looks like, how we then, make this as the final step is, here's executable found running in a suspicious location. And so I have a machine. I want to know, is it dangerous or not? I just click a button. Click a button.
So this is really interesting, because some people watching this may have seen like all that Custo query language stuff and been like, whoa, what's Paul typing there, right? There's a bunch of queries. And then when you got to like the longer query, it was like even longer. And then when you got to the notebook, it was like even longer. And similar to the earlier conversation was how like some of this can seem a little bit daunting, right? But I guess the point here is what you've done there is, and similar to some of these queries are available out of the box in Sentinel, right? And then some of these richer ones, like the ones you've created, well, you're kind of democratizing security intelligence in a way, in a similar way that's kind of happened with AI recently, where we've seen like custom vision, where we just chuck it an image and it tells you whether you're wearing a beard, you've got a beard. I don't know what the terminology is, or not, right? Me and you aren't. And and this kind of, I guess that's kind of what you're trying to do here, is take that complexity of those queries, because I'm guessing, and you work exclusively intensely in this field, it's quite hard to get people that can write all those queries, right?
So I mean, I'd say more than quite hard. First of all, like you need people with an MA in data science. So I loved the talk you had earlier about getting into cyber, or getting into tech full stop. I failed the equivalent of my GCSEs in school. I left school with no exams. I know a long time ago, I did an MCSE in NT4, and just loved computers, and became the CEO of my company. I mean, I don't believe you have to go to college to get into IT. I don't believe you have to go to college to get into data science. But if you want to start building models, to do Python, that's pretty easy. To get into building hardcore models, it would help if you paid more attention at maths and weren't picking your nose and looking out the window. And, it would help if you had that kind of background. But here's the thing is, what we're trying to do with this, like what we've done with these models, is we put them into a Flask app, we host that on Kubernetes, and we expose the API. And then we just call the API, and we can get people to run very complex analytical model, environments, and the eventual outcome is somebody goes on a website and they get the response. So that's that's where cybersecurity is going to go.
Yeah, I love that kind of vision for the future. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think getting all your logs somewhere and running these kind of queries, and the future definitely seems like it's in that machine learning space. And from a cloud skills perspective, it feels like combining those two, right? The data science skills, learning that. I know I did a little bit myself when I actually was a SOC analyst and did a bunch of security operations stuff a few years back now. And then when we launched Sentinel, I started getting back into a lot of the KQL and the query stuff. And I was like, oh, this has changed completely since 2011 or whenever I was doing it, right? And I had to, my Python was okay, but I was having to learn like pandas and data frames and visualizing data and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think a good tip there, if people are interested in the kind of security operations side, is to Python and data science are your friend there. It's very much, it seems to have moved more into that kind of field with the massive data that we have now and we're trawling through. Yeah, thank you. But we're kind of we're almost at time. I don't know if we're going to get kicked off on the hour, Adam, or not. We can we'll find out in a moment. But
we can. I mean, we can keep talking. We get kicked off Learn TV on the hour. Right. Brutal, right to the second as well.
Right to the second.
But, yeah. But no, I think it was absolutely fascinating, and it was great to learn a bit more about Sentinel as well. Certainly, I know that we shared the link earlier about Sentinel Ninja. I'm sorry, Paul, I'm sorry that's covering your face.
That's okay.
Where the graphic is, but that's been put together by the tech community. And then I think the other thing was that there was some documents as well about Sentinel. So if you're looking to get the official docs, they are there. But the one thing that's missing right now, I think we're just going to call that out, Dean, was the Sentinel learning path. So I think we just need to watch this space. So hopefully,
I may or may not be contributing towards that. So yeah, coming soon. I think we can say it's coming soon. Yeah, hopefully soon we'll have Azure Sentinel learning path, or at least very soon a couple of initial modules for that learning path for people to learn Azure Sentinel over on Microsoft Learn, where you can get your points and your badges and combine it with the rest of your Microsoft Learning on Microsoft Learn. So yeah, coming very soon.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Well. Are there any sort of last comments or things? I don't know if anyone's asked anything in the window. No, they haven't. Not for a few minutes anyway. We've had a few comments, funny comments as well.
How many windows I have opened? Yeah.
Actually, Paul, that was me. I was just thinking because my internet's been struggling, so I was closing everything just to make sure that this one window I've got open that's hosting this didn't go under. But yeah, it always impresses me when people manage to have that many open.
Yeah, I'm watching 5 crypto coins that are bouncing up and down at the moment. So when do I buy? When do I sell?
There's all them tabs, and he's got 7 screens on the wall and everything right now.
and a computer behind me with a stand-up desk with more tabs, and when your computer, when something happens or just restarts because the Windows updates, and you come back and it says you want to restore the browser, and you're like, no
way.
All that crap. You can keep that closed.
Oh my goodness. So, I have to say, I think it's wonderful how Microsoft Edge can support so many Windows these days. There we go. And there's my plug. As always, do not forget that you can catch up with learning Microsoft Learn. There is the link. Later on today, we will have the links from today. I'm sorry, Paul, that's covering your face again. We'll have it. Hang on, let me see if I can do this. There we go. There we go. At this link. So CS Show 4, that link is not live yet, so do not click on it if you're watching live. Come back to it later on. Store it in your favorites, and we'll have something for you later on. But I just wanted to end by saying a huge thank you. So first of all, thank you to Paul for sharing. Thank you very much, Paul. David he's left us, but thank you to David. There is his Twitter handle if you want to follow him. Obviously to Dean. There we go. And I am counting down the seconds to say thank you to myself as well. I am Adam Jackson, and we will see you this time next week on Learn TV and MS Dev UK. So see you again soon, and thanks for joining us.
See ya.
Thank you.